Okay, so for those of you that don't know, I moderate a community of agency owners. It's a paid group, and in the group, people ask questions about various topics. And one of the questions was so good I thought it warranted a video, because I thought maybe other people would benefit from my answer to it as well. So just to give some context, here was the question. What do people use in terms of a system or a prompt or format to remind themselves about their vision for their company and the exciting goal that they are working on? I find that any anxiety or negative mood I have is most often related to frustration / lack of clarity or lack of motivating vision at the moment within my company. And then someone else said, yep, I would love to understand how to do weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly goals. And both of them mentioned, should there be some sort of vision board, or how should I do it visually? So anyways, the reason why I wanted to answer this and do a little video is because this is something that can really block you. I know from firsthand experience, it can really block you if you don't understand kind of where you're going or why you're doing something. So in the early days of the company, when I was running Jacked, I was just going, right? Like when you're starting a business and you're just getting things off the ground, it's just like go, 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 go. And then sometimes you get the feeling of, you're like, wait a second, like where am I going? Why am I doing this? And it's kind of like, at least for me, like, I got taken back. I was like, wait a second, why am I spending all this time working? Where am I actually going? What's the point of all of it? And that's when I realized, like, okay, I didn't have a clear enough vision for, and even like the year, right? Like, where am I going this year, and how am I gonna get there, right? Because if you're just going, you don't know where you're going or how you're gonna get there. You just wake up one day and you're like, wait a second, what am I doing? And it can get, like you said here, it's like you can have some anxiety and negative mood because there's a lack of clarity and where you're going, and you just feel like you're just doing the same thing every single day. So anyways, it wasn't until a few years ago when we really put in place a system on and an operating cadence on how we're going to set yearly goals and a yearly vision of where we wanted to be in a year, and then how we're actually going to get there, right? So there's two important components. One is actually thinking how you're going to set the vision for the year, and then also how the operating cadence you're going to use to constantly remind yourself of that vision and to work towards that vision. So that's what I wanted to walk you guys through today, just how we do it. We implemented this for the first time a couple years ago, and since then it really changed the game, so to speak, for us. We typically run these yearly meetings with someone else facilitates. So in our case, we pay someone, an executive coach, to come in and facilitate this, because it's really hard to do this for yourself when you're when you're running the business. I find, and we found, it was very helpful for someone else to facilitate, so then we can actually really participate, because, and I'll show you in a second, there's some visualization exercises, or there's a lot of other exercises where when you're facilitating, you can't participate as well. So that's why we actually pay someone to come in and facilitate these things for us. And we, at the same time, we get paid as well sometimes to come in and facilitate for other people. Just because it's easier to have a third party working with you, we found. So anyways, I'm going to walk you through the format. And for those of you, here, come on in, camera. For those of you in the Slack group and community, I'll give you access to all the different meeting agendas. So we have the yearly agenda, the quarterly, monthly, weekly, all the templates, all of that. This though, I'm only releasing to the private group. So if you want access to all these templates and exactly how we do it, join the private group. That's part of what one of the benefits of being a member of the group is I'm going to release all this stuff. But let me just take you through at a high level how this works. So it really starts with a yearly meeting. So at that yearly meeting, right, if you've been in business for a year, let's assume you've done everything that I'm about to describe. What you would do is at the end of the year, you have a meeting, and in that meeting you go through a retrospective of the previous year. You look at what were the goals we set for the year, and how did we do on them. Right, so that's one thing. Let's say if you've done this before, but let's go into the more important part, which is how do you actually set that vision for the year, which then gets broken down into quarterly, monthly, and weekly goals. So what we like to do is there's a couple things. So we start out with a visualization exercise, and this is why it's really helpful to have a third-party person helping you facilitate this, so that you can actually, if you're the founder, the CEO, or if you're on the executive team, that's who's invited to this, by the way. For us, we have the executive team. In the early days, it was just me. A few years ago, it was just me at these things. So it was really helpful to have a third party, because like running this exercise on myself, didn't make sense. So if you're a small company, it may just be you that's doing a lot of some of this early stage planning. So even more important to have the third party help. But anyways, once you're there, one of the exercises we like to do is this visualization exercise. And so we literally close our eyes, right? And the person facilitating takes you through and asks some questions along these lines, right? It's okay. Let's fast forward an entire year, and maybe you actually want to do this right now, right? Close your eyes if you're here. Close your eyes and look forward 12 months from now, right? You've accomplished everything that you want to accomplish. You've had success. What does the company look like in a year? What have you achieved? What kind of projects were you working on? Right, and you go through a bunch of these questions, right? You might ask things like, what does your team look like? What does your office look like? Right, and so there's a series of prompts, and it goes on for about 5, sometimes 10 minutes, right? Where we're prompting the future vision of the company, what we would all like it to be, right? And then after that, we then share as a group. Right, here's what we would like, and here's what success looks like in a year where we'd like the company to go, to be, right? And then after that, we use that to set the stage. So that takes a while. We get everything out. We see who's overlapping, what it's like, etc. So that might be a 20-minute kind of thing or whatever it ends up being. And then we dive into the different components of the business, right? So we'll go segment by segment. So we'll go through like marketing and sales, product, fulfillment, operations, all of that. And we'll start looking at kind of like the biggest pain points that we have in the company. And we start listing them out, the things that we can improve upon and all of those things. And what you'll start noticing is you'll start grouping, and I'm really condensing this, right? Because it's usually a day to 2 day long kind of exercise here. And you can look at the format so you can see, the days and how this really works. But long story short is you'll start seeing how the biggest challenges you have, the biggest blockers you have, end up being the things that will help you achieve your vision. And we end up boiling it down into like the 3 biggest, most important things. So just to give you an example, I'll give you an example from the past, and then I'll even give you an example from this year. So one of the things we realized a couple years ago was that as we were growing, right, and just as a quick recap, as an agency, there's essentially 3 main systems. You have the new business system, the fulfillment system, and the back office system. Back office being HR, operations, finance, etc. Right? So as we were growing, we're getting a lot of new business, we were fulfilling it, but then our back office didn't keep up with that. Right, our HR, our finance, etc. wasn't evolving fast enough. So then we weren't really working as a nice, well-oiled machine. So a couple years back, we said, hey, we want the financial system and the operational system be a nice, well-oiled machine, right? So that it could support anything we do. And that was part of the vision. And then as we were going through all our problems, we realized like one of the biggest things was that exactly, like our financial system, operation system weren't where it needed to be, and it was causing us problems. So naturally that became a nice fit, a nice initiative. And so then we broke it up and we worked on it. And then by the end of the year, we had this nice financial system, a nice operational system that we use today. And that's how we came up with it, right? This year, for example, it's looking back or looking forward in 2019 at the start of the year, we said what we would love to have happen is to reduce our downside risk. And at the end of the year, to have our downside risk reduced to zero. Now, what do I mean by that? And really in the vision, by the way, what we had was like, we didn't call it exactly that. It was like, hey, we would love to not worry about ever losing money or something like that, right? That would be nice. Because even though we did really well in 2018, right, at the start of the year, we set revenue targets, we set profit targets, and we hit them, right? We set out at the beginning of the year, 4 million in revenue, 20% profit margin, and boom, we hit it. By the way, a big reason why we were able to hit it, there was a lot of factors, right? But remember when I talked about the financial system, well, back office, that was a contributor to it. Right, but along the way, we weren't, as much as we were, we were on that track. And we ended up doing really well, right? If we would have, say a recession would have hit, or we would have lost a couple big customers, or whatever it was, right? We weren't prepared to take that hit successfully, right? We could scale up, but like, what if something we lost a big customer, we lost $100,000 in revenue in a monthly period, or I don't know, something happened, right? We weren't prepared for that. And so one thing that I wanted to make sure of moving forward was that we reduced the downside risk such that no matter our revenue level, we were always good. So it's a common thing for agencies, right? You could be growing, but then what if you have a down month? And then you shoot back up, right? Are you going to be okay during that down month? And so that's what I wanted to make sure of this year, was that, hey, say our revenue dipped for whatever reason, or someone didn't pay, right? Stuff happens, right? And our revenue went from $330,000 a month to $200,000 a month. Like, would we be okay, right? Could we handle that? And same thing, what if we wanted to scale to $400,000 in a month, but then that next month we went back down to $350,000? Basically, like, I wanted the company to be such that at any level of revenue, we would be good and we would be making a profit. So that's what I mean by reducing the downside risk, is that we weren't getting ourselves in trouble when we grew. We were growing smartly. So anyways, long story short, that was like a whole thing we're working on this year, and so we set an entire roadmap and plan for that. So anyways, you go down and you start coming up with these different initiatives that in theory will help you achieve the most important parts of your vision, right? So we say, let's only get 3 or 4, right? So max 5, because it's hard to do a lot of things. So we have 3 this year. Usually we have 3 or 4 big ones. And this is what we do. Once we lay out those initiatives, then we set KPIs for them. So it's not enough just to say, yeah, reduce downside risk, or build that back office engine, or whatever it is, right? You have to set, how do you know if you achieved it, right? So you set KPIs, key performance indicators, or benchmarks for them. So for each one, reducing downside risk, we have a metric for it, or things you have to achieve to say, yep, we did it. And that's what you're working towards, right? Because there has to be a way to know that you actually succeeded with it. So anyways, once you do that, and you have, here's what success looks like in a year, then you start working backwards, right? You work backwards by quarter, Q1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's really hard to predict the future. So that's why we don't even really do more than a year right here. Even saying a year period is really, really tough to estimate. And so when we're saying, well, how are we going to get there? Think of it like like a wedge. So if this is your goal at the end of the year, here's your clarity becomes greater the closer you go to the start of the year. So you have Q1, 2, 3, and 4, and your task lists on what needs to get done will be greater on Q1 versus Q4 because you don't know how things are going to move over the year, right? So we then map out and we say high level, okay, here's the 4-quarter roadmap on how we're going to achieve this goal. And in Q1, we're going to get more granular on what we're going to do because that's the nearest, right? And then we have a quarterly roadmap, and then we have a monthly roadmap and a weekly roadmap, right? And then you have to really get in this nice operating cadence where you have a weekly meeting, a monthly meeting, a quarterly meeting, and which all leads up to the yearly meeting, right? So at the start of the year, then you plan out everything. You have the year long, you have the quarter now, right? And then you have the first month's tasks, you have them already, and then you have the week. So you start and you say, okay, here's what we need to get done this week because it all lined up to the month and the quarter and the year, right? And then every week we're meeting. The management team, the executive team, right, is meeting. And in the early days when it was just me, it wasn't the executive team, it was just me and my coach or whatever it is, right, on a monthly basis or whatever it is. But we found the operating cadence is super important for one, staying on track, and two, to remind us of where we're working towards. So these meetings are all about working on the business, not in the business. So every week, we're literally looking at the vision every month, every quarter, right? So if you think about it, look how many meetings we're about to have. 1 meeting a week, right? So that's 4 meetings in the month. Then at the end of the month, we have another meeting. So now this is an additional meeting, right? And at that meeting, it's a whole month look back. So we block off an entire day. If you're a smaller company, you might only need half a day, right? And then we look back at the entire last month, right? And then we do a retro on that. And then we look through the next month and say, what are we going to get done? And how does that line up to our quarterly goals and then our yearly goals, right? So we're always revisiting them, right? And then we do that every month, right? So weekly meetings, monthly meetings, and then at the end of a quarter, we're doing the same thing, right? We're looking back towards the last quarter and then looking ahead at the next quarter, right? And then we're looking at how that all ties to the vision. So you can see how, look at all these meetings we're having every single week, every month, every quarter, right? We're revisiting the vision, making sure we're on track, making sure it's still accurate. How are we progressing? We're having discussions as an executive team, right? On a weekly basis, we're meeting for an hour to 90 minutes. Then the monthly is a day, quarterly is a day, yearly is a day or two, depending on your size, right? So we're spending a lot of time talking internally about this. So how do we remind ourselves, right? We're never forgetting it because we're literally on this cadence all the time, right? It's like beating a drum. Right, you just go, right? And so you're never losing sight of where you're going because you're constantly revisiting and you're always talking about it. Versus if you only meet once a month or once a quarter about this stuff, you get so busy with the business that you don't take a step back and say, one, are we actually working on the business? And two, where are we going? And how are we reminding ourselves of like where we want to be, right? And sometimes that will change even through the year. We're like, okay, we actually need to adjust here and adjust there. But these are the meetings when you get to take a step back, and you know it's March 24th, 2019 right now. We're about to have our quarterly meeting, Q1 quarterly meeting for all the companies under Popol Group and for Jacked and all of them, right? And so we're going to take a step back and revisit it, right? We're going to be looking at the vision, the yearly goals, see how we're tracking towards them, and then adjust, right? So, but it's this weird thing when you just keep talking about it and you're visiting it all the time, it stays top of mind, and you get excited about it because you're working with other people around you, right? The executive team, or maybe you have an executive coach doing this, right? So anyways, there's a yearly planning meeting agenda, there's a monthly planning meeting agenda, and weekly and quarterly. And by the way, you'll see. Can you show this really quick? So you'll see, like for example, at the monthly planning meeting, you'll see what do we have? Add link to yearly goals, right? We're always revisiting the yearly goals and then the quarterly goals, and then we do you can point it back. So anyways, like it's constantly top of mind, and we're revisiting it, talking about it, right? And so anyways. We, as I mentioned, we even have someone else to facilitate the yearly planning. We do this ourselves now, the quarterly, the monthly, yearly. When it was just me though, and doing a lot of this stuff, every monthly meeting, quarterly, etc., was set with. I was using an executive coach for this. Now we just do the yearly. But if you are smaller and you need help facilitating, let me know. If you're part of the private community, just send me a message. I'm happy to do it. It will be a paid thing. Just like to be upfront about it. Just and I'm not trying to sell something I wouldn't pay for myself. We literally pay someone to do this for us, just so we can get out of our own head. But you don't have to pay me, or have someone else do it for you, or run it yourself, or whatever, right? Point is, like, sometimes it's helpful to have someone else to help facilitate and keep you accountable. But anyways, this really, it's actually very simple, right? But it works, right? The weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly cadence. You're constantly reminding yourself of the vision. We don't have a vision board, but we have it all documented, and then we talk about it, right? We do visualization exercises, and it really helps. And it's really that simple. It's nothing revolutionary, but like, if you don't keep the cadence though of the weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, it's very easy to get off track. It's really important that you set aside the time for this, right? Treat it just as important as any other meeting, just as important like a client meeting. You wouldn't miss that. Don't miss this. Every week, set a time. Every month, every quarter, every year, right? Because if you don't, before you know it, one, you'll wake up saying like, what am I working towards? And two, you'll wake up and say, wow, I didn't make any progress on my yearly goals, right? And then you start feeling like shit. At least for me, that's how I'm like, shit, we haven't gotten anything done. But now we're like, wow, we just go and we feel good about it. Or we adjust. Maybe we're off track or we're on track. But like, we're constantly thinking and talking about it, and that's the important point. And I wish I had, I could say there's like some magic way to do this. I mean, it's just this simple. That's it. This is how we do it. So again, if you want these templates, by the way, join the group. I'll put a link. If you're on YouTube, I'll put a little link. You can join the group. You'll get access to all these templates, as well as a bunch of other templates and processes and stuff that we release, that we've abstracted from Jacked and just release. If you are in the group, you'll go in the member resources doc, and you'll be able to see everything. All these templates will be there on how to run these meetings. So anyways, that's it. Hope this was helpful. Yeah, that's it. All right, guys.